Okay, so we just covered sole proprietorships, partnerships, and franchises. Basically, looking at the pros and cons of certain types of business organizations. Based on the enterprise you're creating, um, some have advantages over others. We're going to go on to the next huge topic, the one where most of the money is corporations. It's going to get into some other organizations too. Eventually, we're going to get to labor this unit. But for this part, the focus will be corporations and the various types of corporations that exist. And so the big questions you're going to see are what types of corporations exist. There's a few. There's publicly held, there's closely held, there's an S corp. I mean, there's going to be a variety. There's a um, nonprofit. So we'll look at those. What are the advantages and disadvantages of corporations? One of the key issues here is going to be taxation. And then what are business cooperatives? How can an organization be a nonprofit? Okay. Next topic. Let's look at these quick little facts on corporations. Let's go ahead and look at this one full screen. Um, there are certain types of business structure. It's also called a C corp. 18.5% of small employers structure as corporations. Usually they'll have a reason. Mostly it's the potential for liability, potential for getting sued personally. Corporations and owners are taxed. So that double taxation issue is important. And you have to report corporation profits and losses. There's a reason why you might not want to, but corporate rules require you to. What is a corporation? Corporations are not really people. They're a fictitious person. They're a company. They tend to be the biggest ones: AT&T, Google, Facebook, IBM, etc. It's basically a legal entity or being owned by individual stockholders. Um, it's what's publicly and traded mostly. Stocks or shares represent a stockholder's portion of ownership of a corporation. Basically, you get this little certificate, gives you partial ownership rights. All right, get me out. There we go. Let's go ahead and jot in the notes. Individual stockholders. When I do this is to make sure you've had enough time to do this. So make sure you're typing when I'm typing or have gotten links filled in when I'm filling them in. Ownership corporation. Okay. The next portion, there's a little video clip that explains what a corporation is. Um, as we go through and watch it, I'll try to answer the questions.
Recently, there's been a lot of talk about the role of corporations in our economy, but no one takes the time to explain exactly how they work or the benefits they provide. So let's give it a try.
Let's put on the closed captions. Whenever you're trying to watch film to learn, um, it's important. I think the main limit liability is a key one, and acquire capital to invest in corporation. A little side note: in law school, there's like a whole class on corporations. That shows you how complicated they are. So, yeah.
Corporations are designed to make a profit while delivering value to their shareholders, and by doing so, they drive economic growth and
Profit. Corp. I don't think what I'm saying is wrong though either. But maybe that's not the purpose. Maybe that's the reason why people make the choice to be corporate. Investments are made through stocks. See if it says that. It's a short clip, so
and all the
it's still worth watching because it's giving you an overview of what a corporation is on the quick.
good things that come with it. And as corporations grow, many individuals invest directly or indirectly through mutual, pension, and retirement plans. These stockholders provide seed money or capital for.
So that was fast. Let's go back just a bit. Mutual, pension, three. I don't think we need that though. Identify 3 groups that govern corporations. Let's see if I can do that before they do. I think board of directors, management, shareholders. Let's see what they write.
Retirement plans. These stockholders.
So stocks, so it could be direct or it could be mutual funds, pensions, retirement plans. Here's what they're not telling you. Basically, those mutual funds, pensions, retirement plans are investments into stocks. So some corporate entity, IBM, Amazon, what have you, might be in one of the blue chip mutual funds. So it's more likely to be reliable.
Holders provide seed money or capital for corporations to grow. And in doing so, they create economic growth and reward investors with the opportunity to profit. In this video, we'll start with the basics of corporate structure, but be sure to check out later episodes where we'll dive into some of the specifics. Now, when you think about how a company runs, your first instinct may be to compare it to something like a school board or a homeowners association, or even Congress, where decisions are made by a simple majority vote. But corporations are more complex. In fact, there are 3 principal groups that govern corporations. They are the management, board of directors, and shareholders.
Oh, good, I got it right.
Now, the relationship and responsibilities of these 3 groups are defined primarily by state law in a corporation's own charter and bylaws. That means each.
So state law and corporate charter. Sometimes these are referred to as the articles of corporation. Sure, that sounds about right. That's why a lot of big corporations choose to file their articles of corporation in Delaware because that state law is the friendliest to corporations.
Corporation is a little different, but all have government oversight. The management is made up of all those people with acronyms like CEO and CFO. Their responsibility is running the day-to-day operations of the company. Most importantly, management identifies and manages corporate risks. Now, the board of directors' responsibility is overseeing the strategy and performance of these guys and gals, the management. Within the board are various committees designed to tackle specific issues, such as audits, compensation, or corporate governance. Committees recommend policy for approval by the entire board. But we'll talk about this more in future episodes when we explain the inner workings of boards. The board of directors' main responsibility is to make decisions in the best interest of the corporation's shareholders, the people who voluntarily invest by buying stock. That's why they are commonly referred to as owners. Shareholders' piece of power is the right to elect these directors. They also approve mergers and acquisitions. And that's the structure of the corporation, employing millions of people in all sectors of the economy, providing health insurance and retirement plans, providing investment opportunities for all generations, and providing innovative products and services that affect every aspect of daily life. Be sure to check back for future episodes in this series, where we will continue to explore how corporations work and their role within the U.S. economy. See you soon.
Okay, they're right. The board of directors for the corporation approves mergers and acquisitions. But for the government, it's the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, that will approve mergers and acquisitions. Okay, I'm going to pause now because it's time for first period to start. I may be recording during first period, so try to have a heart and be understanding. Thank you. If you hear noise, thanks. Okay, where were we? Okay, so you just finished the video. Yeah, I know they didn't mention the Federal Trade Commission, but that's who does the approvals for the federal government, and so it's still correct. All right. Hopefully, you found that video useful. The main types of corporations are closely held and publicly held. A closely held corporation, stocks tend to be issued to a few people, a limited number of people. Typically, it's family. It's not always family, but it's usually family, and members of management, CEO, CFO, etc. CTO is an important member of management increasingly in a technical world. That stands for Chief Technical Officer. So, a publicly held corporation, these are ones are bought and sold in the open market, typically NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange are the biggest ones. All right, let's open this up, see if there's anything else to see. Yeah, so that's usually what you're trading on. You're trading on the publicly held corporations when you're investing in stocks. And people are looking at earnings to figure out if they're going to expect values to go up or down. Advantages of corporation. The main thing is individual investors can't be sued. So if you're particularly in a dangerous enterprise like chemical, weapons, these things are dangerous and it leads to a lot of litigation. So you don't want to be personally sued. So you create the corporate form to shield you from being sued personally. That's a big deal. It might not sound like it, but if you have millions and millions of dollars, you want to protect it. And that's why it's an important aspect of the corporation. Shares of a stock are transferable, means anyone can buy and sell them if they're willing. There's a huge potential for growth. You can also borrow money by selling bonds. And this is another way to raise revenue in addition to the stocks. Make money, you need to have money. So basically, they're creating their own source of capital with both bonds and selling of shares. Uh, of course, you also give ownership when you sell those shares. So there's a risk of losing control. Like what happens when you create something that grows beyond you. For example, Apple ended up firing Steve Jobs eventually, even though it was his creation. Turns out that was a dumb move, and they hired him back soon after, especially after he wrote a book and retired for a little bit. But yeah, uh, being able to hire the best available labor is another benefit because you're not just relying on a partner or a sole proprietor to produce a good or service. And they last a while. What you saw on the slideshow, see this fancy looking paper? That's a share of Boston Edison stock. And if you look at the watermark in it, it says certificate of stock. I assume that's Edison. I'm not real sure who the old guy is here, but that would kind of make sense based on the stock. So probably a safe assumption. Okay, the main disadvantage with corporations are taxes. Okay, because theoretically, the corporation gets taxed and all the employees and management gets taxed. So they get taxed twice. It's also harder to set up than a sole proprietorship or partnership. You have to have more formalities and rules to obey. You need a corporate charter, and then you need a certificate of corporation, which is basically a license issued by the state. Double taxation. Corporations must pay the tax on the income. Shareholders must also pay taxes on dividends or any profits they receive from sale of stock, and the employees must pay tax on their income. Here's the thing: a lot of the most rich corporations avoid corporate income tax. They don't pay it because they don't want to, and they have lawyers to help them avoid it. This means, of course, that individual tax burdens go up because corporations aren't paying their fair share. And if you're telling me $1 billion company can't afford to pay tax, I'll tell you that they just don't want to pay tax, and they figured out a way around it. Um, you also lose some control of your business when you're a corporation because you have to follow your charter and the rules from the state, and you have more regulations. Okay, let's write that in. And then we'll go to the next one. What makes startup expensive? Lawyers. Got to hire lawyers to create the corporate forms because you need it done correctly. Like I mentioned, there's a whole class just on corporations, which shows you it's complicated that lawyers take in law school. Actually, there's a section on the bar exam dedicated just to corporations. Well, it's part of a section on the bar exam that they can test you on. Okay, where was I? Double taxation. Hopefully, you find the amount of blanks to fill in short enough that you can focus on the learning. Remember, filling in the blanks is not the point. The point is learning. That doesn't mean you don't need to fill in the blanks. It just means the learning is the most important part. All right, let's go to when corporations combine. They form a couple different styles of merger. Got a horizontal merger, a vertical merger, and then sometimes you just have a conglomerate. I'm going to explain this real quick. This time we're going to do a note first and review the slides second. Don't tune out at any point, okay? All right, let's look at it. When you're talking a horizontal merger, this is the combining of two or more. Looks like they're out already. Oh, chargers. Typically, if you got a horizontal merger, you're merging with a competitor. You produce the same good or service, but maybe they're in a different market. So, like if Southwest and Delta merged, it would be two companies in the airline industry, but in different locations. Southwest focuses on Southwest the U.S. The Delta focuses on the South and East Coast. If you have a vertical merger, that means you're combining with something up and down the supply chain or different areas of production. So when Skype got bought out, I think that got bought out by, I don't know if it was Google or Apple, but someone bought it out so they could get their video function as part of their system. Yeah, that could be an example of vertical merger. Conglomerate is when you have merging of three or more businesses that may be totally unrelated. General Electric, they were in broadcasting, but they're also making appliances. And maybe they were also making clothes or I don't know, whatever. But when you have these businesses that are so huge that they're making all kinds of different stuff, it's considered a conglomerate. This is an example of a horizontal merger, as U.S. Airways is merging with America West. Often one of the corporations is bigger than the other, so not all mergers are equal, hence the huge whale. Well, that's my bell to start first period. Much appreciation of first period for letting me record. Thank you. We'll continue with mergers that went bad, and though you should notice in a moment. Thanks. Okay, continuing with mergers that went bad. As you watch this little clip, and you should have to either click on the notes here or click in the video, list the top 5 worst mergers, and then do your own analysis and determine which one was the worst and give a reason why. I'm going to play it if you can't hear it on my screen, go ahead and pause until you see me finish answering the questions. Though I don't think I am going to necessarily share my answers on this one. Okay, so go ahead and just watch, and then we'll try to answer.
Hi, I'm Matt Joblin, and welcome to Money Trees, the show where we break down financial top fives for you. It's often said that two heads are better than one, but that's not always the case. Let's take a look at the top 5 worst mergers. At number 5, we have the merger between New York Central Railroad and the Pennsylvania Railroad. Fierce rivals throughout the 19th century, these two corporations applied for a merger in 1962. At the time, the deal would have created the 6th largest corporation in the US, but by the time the deal was approved in 1968, travel trends had evolved to include highways and planes. Tighter regulations and leadership conflicts also played a part in destroying value, and within 2 years, the Pennsylvania New York Central Transportation Company filed for what was the largest bankruptcy in US history at the time. Next up, at number 4, we have Quaker Oats and Snapple. From the outset, Wall Street warned that the ingredients were wrong for this merger. Analysts believed that when Quaker Oats bought Snapple for $1.7 billion, they overpaid by a whopping $1 billion. The deal that went through in 1994 was doomed from the start. Not only did Quaker Oats overpay, they bought a business that they had no idea how to run and were unable to bring specific value-added skill sets and expertise. In a classic case of not doing your own due diligence, Quaker Oats planned to leverage Snapple's existing relationships with supermarkets and large retailers, failing to realize that about half of Snapple's sales came from smaller channels, such as convenience stores. They also mishandled Snapple's advertising, and the differing cultures translated into a disastrous marketing campaign for Snapple that managed to offend potential consumers. Just 27 months later, Quaker Oats sold Snapple to a holding company for $300 million, which works out to a loss of $1.6 million for each day they own Snapple. Third on the list is Sprint and Nextel Communications. These firms worked out a merger in 2005 valued at $35 billion. Despite both being telecommunication companies, they had very different approaches. Nextel placed more emphasis on the business, while Sprint focused on consumers and broadening data communications. They were also hit hard by the introduction of smartphones to the market. High-level executives began to leave almost immediately, and in 2013, the company wound up. At number 2, we have eBay and Skype. Back in September 2005, eBay announced that it was buying internet telephone company Skype Technologies for $2.6 billion. The aim was to integrate the two technologies so that Skype would improve communications between potential buyers and sellers, building relationships and driving sales. It didn't work out this way. For most eBay users, email was effective and anonymous enough. The merger also suffered from a culture clash between the two companies. Several management teams came and went over the next 4 years. Eventually, in 2009, eBay sold off 65% of the company to Silver Lake, Andreessen Horowitz, and the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board for $1.9 billion. Now, for the most infamous merger failure of all time. In 2001, America Online, or AOL, acquired Time Warner in a mega merger for $165 billion, the largest business tie-up at that time. Both companies expected to capitalize by blending a mega merger for $165 billion, the largest business tie-up at that time. Both companies expected to capitalize by blending mass media and the internet. The dot-com bubble burst followed shortly after, destroying that promising potential. The company's value crashed dramatically, and in 2002, it was reported that its valuation had dropped by a massive $99 billion. the largest loss from a merger ever reported. Now, here at Investing Channel, we always talk about the importance of doing your due diligence. That's why. See you next week.
Okay, let's continue. On the notes. You do not have to have the same reason. You can pick whatever one you want, but that I think was good for me, so that's what I did. All right, let's go to multinational corporations. These are large and have headquarters in one country, and they have subsidiaries throughout the world, often in multiple companies. They offer products worldwide. It spreads technology to new places, um, and it can influence culture, politics, um, because there's similarity of product in the same places. It's why you'll find Coca-Cola in China or McDonald's in Paris. Though, if you go to Paris, don't eat at McDonald's. Branch out, um, or at least don't eat more than one meal at McDonald's, because France is pretty famous for cuisine. All right, it does encourage low wages and poor working conditions because you don't have many different companies that you can work for. So let's open this one up. This is telling you that all these multinational corporations, Marlboro, Gillette, Coca-Cola, GE, Nescafe, Pepsi, HP, Nokia, Samsung, Citibank, Microsoft, Disney, BMW. You'll find them in various places. Is that Patagonia? All right, let's look at the next slide. See if we have any visual. Cooperatives and non-cooperatives. Cooperatives are when you have multiple entities working together. Nonprofit, generally, you're not trying to get a profit. When we're talking cooperative, uh, it's owned and operated by a group of individuals for shared benefit. It could be a business co-op. I know there's famous agricultural ones. Let's go ahead and write in some notes. By a group of individuals, their shared benefit. What are the three main types of cooperatives? Let's look at that one next. You have consumer co-ops. This is when you have retail outlets owned and operated by consumers offering reduced prices for its members. I think Costco might fall into this group. A service co-op is when you provide services rather than goods, like a credit union has better banking rates for the consumers. So you might be able to get interest even on a checking account when most banks won't offer that. Producer co-ops, like in the farming sector, agriculture, they're co-ops to help members sell their products at the highest price and most conveniently. So you could have the co-op in a relatively close location. Excuse the yawn. It's been a rainy day. I was on the road a long time this morning. Let's look at the visuals here, and then we'll go to the next page. All right, what do I see when I open this visual credit union? I originally, when I was growing up, I was had my money in the credit union, and that you could save money and make interest, even in a small way, is pretty cool. Usually, the interest rates are a little better because all the money from the credit union is going in there. Here you see a picture of a farmer's co-op, and then People's Food Co-op, which will have healthier food. Then you have just general nonprofits like Lodi Memorial Hospital or PBS that are not trying to make money, um, but they are trying to pay for their own costs. So sometimes their costs will go up. PBS does all these fund drives They do not pay income taxes if they can prove that they belong in the nonprofit tax category. So write in profits and taxes. So they're major characteristics. Get a few examples of these. Um, Professional organizations like the American Bar Association, the California Teachers Association, NEA, the National Educators Association, whose goals are to improve the skills, working conditions, and image of its occupations. You also have CIO, AFL, Teamsters, to name but a few. And those last ones are union organizations as well. Business associations promote business interests of a city, region, or group of business. Think of the Rotary Club. You can have trade associations to promote particular industries. You might have a trade association for milk dairy farmers, people that produce, milk and cheese. You could have a trade association for electricians, plumbers, that kind of thing. Trade unions. These are groups of workers whose main goal is to improve uh, working conditions, hours, wages in a particular sector. Teachers have a union. Uh, Truck drivers have a union. I think that's the Teamsters. And you're supposed to respect the union by not trying to bargain on your own for improvement in any of these positions. A group of workers whose goal is to improve working conditions, hours, wages, and fringe benefits. Let's look at the visual, and then I think we got the next quiz, and we'll call it a wrap on this video. Uh, let's look at it. So what do we see? We see a professional organization of doctors. Um, we also see, I don't know what the heck that is. There you have Safeway, whose union members are picketing because they think Safeway's doing something wrong. You got a professional association of realtors in Lodi. That's the grape logo. Okay, let's go to the questions here on the quiz, and then we'll call it a lesson. All right, what types of corporations exist? Types corporations are publicly held, closely held, S corp. Wants us to add closely held, publicly held. I think that first two is enough. Let's get rid of the last one. For you, that's enough. What are advantages and disadvantages of corporations? Advantages of corporations are limited liability, easy to raise investment money, sorry, I'm zoned out there. I don't think I slipped enough. Hope that happens to you sometimes. Happens to me sometimes too. Sorry about that. Oh yeah. Let's see. Let's look at the advantages and the disadvantages. Advantage: liability, limited liability, raise money, test employees, trade stock. And trade stock. Advantages of corporations are double taxation, complicated to start, expensive to start. I would say not just start. They're expensive to start and run, and they're complicated to start and run. See if there's any other disadvantages that are important to add. Cost control, expense. That kind of covers it. What are business cooperations? Cooperative business cooperatives are they tend to be nonprofit. So they're operated by a group for shared benefit. Professional unions, consumer, consumers, service, and producer. All right. An organization is a nonprofit if they qualify to not pay taxes, meet certain IRS rules. Not only income. See what it says. First thing, do not operate for profits. Do not pay income taxes. Not pay. It's not earning income. Change that to profit. They do earn income. They don't earn profit. They put the income back into the business. All right, that concludes this video. We'll continue with labor and labor-related issues in the next slideshow. Hopefully this video on corporations was helpful for you. Peace, peace, peace.